Welcome. Today we're going to talk about in medias res. This is how to start your story off in the action. It's an exciting way to start your story. So in medias res, it's Latin. It means to start a story in the middle of things. So you're starting not with a whole bunch of exposition up front, not giving a bunch of explanation as to who the characters are, where they are, things like that. But you're starting with a scene where something is happening. It doesn't necessarily have to be, when I say an action scene, it doesn't necessarily have to be like a big battle or something like that. But just there's some kind of movement. Your character is doing something. So writers who start in the midst of a story, rather than providing this whole large amount of exposition up front, are much more likely to engage the reader. This is a very modern way of writing, even though there are older and classic pieces that do use in medias res. This is pretty common in modern pieces, modern novels. So let's take a look at a couple of examples here. Certainly a classic piece, Homer's The Odyssey. So in this piece, Homer starts the story years after the Battle of Troy. So instead of giving this whole amount of exposition up front, he just starts into the conflict of Odysseus' struggle to get home. And then he moves forward from there. It's like action from the beginning of where he starts off, right? So he doesn't give you a bunch of information about who Odysseus is and what color his hair is and what he wears on a daily basis. He doesn't do that. So you don't have that heavy exposition. You start right into the story. If you take a look at first lines in short stories and in novels in particular, you'll find that a lot of these first lines are really good demonstrations of in medias res. So we can see here that authors are starting off the reader from the beginning with some kind of action. There's something that's happening right up front. Let's take a look at a couple of examples here. Our first example is from Fight Club, and the very first sentence is, Tyler got me a job as a waiter. After that, Tyler's pushing a gun in my mouth and saying, the first step to eternal life is you have to die. So we've got some pretty serious action up front, right? Very first sentence here, there's a lot of drama from the very beginning. So this is, of course, a very contemporary novel. This next one here, Pride and Prejudice, that's a classic. That's early 1800s, British classic. The first line is, it is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. And that's what the entire story is about. It's about whether or not these single men are going to get married to these single women. So that's the whole story right there from the very beginning. The Martian, another contemporary novel. Very first line is, I'm pretty much effed. So that pulls the reader in right away, because the first thing you think is, hey, wait a second, what's going on here? You know, instantly you want to know what's happening, and you want to turn that page and continue on with the story to find out more about it. Ray Bradbury in Fahrenheit 451, very first line, it was a pleasure to burn. So there we've got this reflection. We've got some action in that reflection from the very start there. And then our last example from Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone from J.K. Rowling, again a contemporary novel, but a children's novel. Very first line, Mr. and Mrs. Dursley of number 4 Privet Drive were proud to say that they were perfectly normal. Thank you very much. So this is the very beginning. This gives us a lot of tone, a lot of information about characters, but it's also, because of that tone, lets us know that something else is going to happen here. We know that's not the end of the story. This isn't a story about people being normal. It's probably going to be a story about something else. So, in medias res, great way to start off your stories, and some first line examples here on how you can make that happen. I hope this is helpful to you, and good luck with your writing.